From this moment onward, consider this space ours. Outsiders, hit the road. Hold up, what's the deal here? What's got both of you fired up? Right after my mother's funeral, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law launched into a relentless tirade against me. My husband tried to intervene, but they kept on going. You're being deceived. Maybe someone's got you under a spell, they jeered. Yep, it's all because your mom coddled you. She's the one who molded you into this. It's all on her. When they started disrespecting my late mother, I snapped. I can handle them trash-talking me, but I won't stand for it when it comes to my mom. I'm Kathy, 35 years young. My husband David, just a tad older, and I crossed paths at work and tied the knot 5 years back. We used to share our space with my mom, creating quite the dynamic household. Looking back, these past 5 years have been a whirlwind. It all started at my dad's real estate firm half a decade ago. With a knack for understanding the ebb and flow of both people and money, I pursued economics in college and applied that know-how to my career. Yet, amidst my strides, there were whispers. Some attributed my success solely to my parentage, dubbing me the boss's daughter instead of acknowledging me by name. And then there was David, the golden boy of sales in the same company, drawing attention from all corners, leaving me on the receiving end of more than a few icy glares. Don't get me wrong, I'm not naive enough to claim all my achievements as solely my own. It's the collective effort of those around me. Still, it grated on me, being boxed in as just the boss's daughter. These trying times, my father passed away. With my brother stepping into the shoes as president, the disdainful glances directed at me only grew sharper. Must have botched something up if your brother's taking the reins now. Guess we'll just call you the president's sister, huh? Normally, I might have brushed it off, but in the wake of my father's funeral, those words cut deep. Mentally exhausted, I found myself grappling with a singular question. What do I truly desire? Even as I tried to soldier on, I felt a void, a lack of inspiration. And then, almost impulsively, I uttered those fateful words to my husband David. I want to be an investor. Instead of dismissing my seemingly outrageous aspiration, he stood by me, offering his unwavering support. When I confessed to my mom my desire to quit my job and delve into investing, her response stung. You should have pursued what you love from the start, without fretting over your father. Despite the rawness of my father's passing, her words felt like a wake-up call. Previously consumed by the negatives, her smile ignited a newfound resolve within me, one that cared little for the opinions of others. Amidst the chaos of funerals, estate settlements, relocations, and a whirlwind of tasks, I embarked on my journey as an investor. It wasn't all smooth sailing from the get-go, but with the unwavering support of my calm and cheerful husband and my mother's encouraging presence, I pressed on. With a combination of my savings and my father's inheritance, my investments began to bear fruit. Over the years, my income soared far beyond what I earned at my previous job, leading to a deeply fulfilling life. Yet amidst this joy, two shadows loomed large: my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, constant sources of concern. My sister-in-law, 3 years senior to my husband and 4 to me, remains unmarried. Since David and I decided to tie the knot, her demeanor suggested she wasn't exactly thrilled. Even my mother-in-law seemed to view me as nothing more than a privileged daddy's girl, despite my equal footing in the workforce. Despite my father's CEO status, each visit to my in-laws was met with snide remarks. Being the coddled princess, I bet you're useless at housework. It's a woman's duty, you know. Spare David the trouble. Mother-in-law, my own mother taught me well, so I'm quite capable. Besides, with both of us working, David and I share responsibilities. It was his suggestion, actually. But my mother-in-law wouldn't hear of it. Even my sister-in-law couldn't contain her frustration in my presence, insisting it's absurd for a woman to marry yet make her husband do chores. After my father-in-law's passing, my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law took a nosedive. Must be nice, living off David's earnings and lazing about at home. I'm dealing with so much since my husband's gone. How come you get to live so carefree, Kathy? Mother-in-law, as I've explained before, I earn my keep as an investor. I'm far from idling. If you're truly struggling, I'd suggest finding a way to manage your own finances. Besides, having kids isn't the sole measure of a woman's worth. With my father-in-law's demise, my mother-in-law's fixation on money intensified. She seemed resentful of my perceived ease, despite my commitment to my work as an investor. Yet I wasn't inclined to hand over any cash. Every visit to the in-laws revealed more lavish purchases, making it clear where any allowance would end up. I love David, a man of unwavering trust, and I chose to shield him from the truth about his family. There came a moment when I found solace in confiding in my own mother. Why can I conceive? The weight of uncertainty as I approached 35, coupled with incessant inquiries from my mother-in-law about when will you start a family, became overwhelming. Her hurtful words labeling me as useless echoed in my mind, and I couldn't contain my frustration. So I poured out my heart to my mother, seeking understanding. Well, I had you when I was 35, so there's no need to worry. Timing is in God's hands, dear. He'll guide us when the time is right. Her comforting words lifted a burden from my soul. From then on, even amidst my mother-in-law's persistent mentions of children, I found reassurance. Children, after all, are a precious blessing. After enduring 5 tumultuous years, a sense of calm finally settled in. Then, unexpectedly, my world was rocked once more by the sudden passing of my mother. Struck by a subarachnoid hemorrhage, she, my guiding light, slipped away, leaving me engulfed in sorrow. David, my steadfast companion through years of shared life, seemed equally shaken. Despite his kindness and support, the funeral arrived before we could fully grasp the void left by my mother's absence. As mourners gathered to bid farewell to my mother, a former executive at the company my brother now led, among them stood my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. It appeared they had chosen a moment when David was absent. "No need for you to be here, Dolan," my mother-in-law remarked curtly, offering no condolences. They proceeded to sign the register, leaving me stunned by their callousness. Yet upon David's return, their demeanor shifted instantly. "You might be struggling, but Kathy's shock is likely even greater. You need to be there for her," they'd insist, seemingly mindful of my emotions. Later, as exhaustion from the whirlwind of recent days weighed heavily on me, the doorbell pierced the quiet of our home. My husband, ever considerate, answered it, assuming my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had come to offer support. Without a moment's hesitation, he ushered them inside. As they entered the living room, their glances towards me twisted into unpleasant smirks. And then came words I never expected. "From today onwards, this is our domain. Outsiders need to leave, Mom," David exclaimed, his surprise evident. My mother-in-law's words poured forth unabated. "Until now, we've tolerated your presence because your mom was here, but now, only jobless Kathy remains. If you let yourself be leached by such a woman, you'll ruin yourself. We'll move in with you, so you need to divorce Kathy." "Mom, what are you saying? Especially now. And what do you mean by jobless?" "I've explained countless times that Kathy is an investor. When you say investor, it sounds like she has a real job. But let's be honest, isn't she just dabbling in stocks? How can such a woman be a wife? You could do so much better." "Wait a second. What's all this about bad-mouthing Kathy? What exactly are you two insinuating?" "Kathy earns her own keep. Don't belittle her efforts. You're the ones being misled. You've been under Kathy's mom's influence all this time. Haven't you been brainwashed?" "That's right. Kathy's turned out this way because her mom spoiled her. I can see why David defends her. It's her mom's fault for raising her like this." As my sister-in-law and mother-in-law continued their disparagement of my mom, my simmering anger finally boiled over. I could endure their insults directed at me, but I refused to tolerate any disrespect towards my mom. "Stop tarnishing the memory of my late mother," I seethed, glaring at them. Yet they both grinned smugly, showing no hint of remorse. Fine, we get it. You don't want us talking about your mom, huh? Now that the mom who always sided with you and allowed you to be a recluse is gone, it must be tough to face the truth." My fists clenched, trembling with suppressed rage. Taking a deep breath to rein in my emotions, I prepared to fire back, but before I could speak, it was David who stepped in. "That's enough, Mom. Stop speaking ill of Kathy," David interjected firmly, addressing both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. "Kathy isn't a recluse. She's a legitimate investor. My mother-in-law and I have been supporting Kathy's endeavors from the start. If Kathy were just fooling around, neither of us would have stood for it." Even my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and I couldn't conceal our surprise at David's uncharacteristically stern tone. My mother-in-law seemed taken aback, scrambling to offer excuses. "Don't be so upset. Nevertheless, Kathy's lifestyle thus far has been sustained by your income, hasn't it? You've provided her with a privileged life, even buying her this lavish condo." Poor David. If you move in with us, we'll take care of all the household chores. Just give us a small allowance. That's all we need. Isn't that right, Mom? My mother-in-law's words were cut short by David's flustered voice. This apartment belongs to Kathy. What? My mother-in-law's incredulous cry filled the room, her surprise impossible to conceal. She scrutinized David with wide eyes, as if seeking confirmation. This apartment belongs to Kathy. When did this happen? I never agreed to that. This apartment was part of my father-in-law's legacy, and Kathy inherited it. That's why the title is in her name. Besides, we split the living expenses evenly. I don't understand what you're insinuating, but Kathy earns more than I do. Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were taken aback by David's revelation. It was understandable. They couldn't have fathomed that I earned more than him. My mother-in-law's energy waned at David's words, leaving her looking like a deflated balloon. Taking the reins from her, my sister-in-law spoke up. That's impossible. Do investors really make that much? Just by trading stocks as an individual? I can't speak for other investors, but perhaps Kathy has a knack for it. Regardless, the facts remain. How dare you undermine my beloved wife? This is our home. Stop kidding around, both of you. Leave now. Upon hearing David's words, my sister-in-law spiraled into panic. What? Hold on. We came here expecting to move in today. What? Now it was my turn, along with my husband, to exclaim in surprise. You sold our house. Why the sudden decision? You could have at least discussed it with me. We thought we could stay here. And we were strapped for cash. I quit my job, assuming you'd support us. If you don't let us stay, we'll be in serious trouble. Mom, please say something. With pleading eyes fixed on David, my sister-in-law shook her mother, who seemed frozen in shock. But the magnitude of the situation left my mother-in-law in a daze. My sister-in-law, her confidence shattered, now clung to me for support. Hey, Kathy, I'm sorry. Please talk to David for me. We can't go on like this. You mentioned you sold your house, so you must have some money saved up, right? I spoke coolly to my clinging sister-in-law, prompting her to lash out at me. Don't act clever. Just because your investments turned out well, don't think you're above everyone else. Know your place. Enough is enough. David's voice boomed, drowning out even my sister-in-law's protests. He fixed a piercing stare on her as she fell silent. Forget about the house. I won't even demand my share. Just leave right now. With that, my husband practically escorted his mother and sister out, firmly locking the door behind them. For a while, we could hear the persistent ringing of the doorbell and pounding on the door, but eventually the noise faded into silence. After that ordeal, word from relatives had it that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had secured a modest apartment to rent and were now living together. Their old family home, nestled in a remote area, didn't fetch much on the market, given its location and the value of the land. My sister-in-law struggled to land a decent job, and their funds quickly dwindled. Despite their repeated attempts to rely on David and me, we firmly shut the door each time. They resorted to selling off their designer possessions and now reportedly scrape by with part-time jobs, working tirelessly from dawn till dusk. Meanwhile, I've enjoyed the freedom that comes with being an investor, no longer subjected to hurtful remarks. And as my late mother had foretold, we're preparing to welcome a new member into our family next year. Once again, I'm grateful